So in this tutorial we're going to draw a flared skirt. So same as before, I'm going to start with my dummy template. So we're going to go to File, New from Template, and select my dummy file. And let's choose the zoom tool and just drag a box over the bottom half of the dummy. So again, I've got my layers panel and my stroke panel expanded because I'm going to be using these constantly throughout the workshop. So the first thing I'm going to do is on layer 1, I'm going to rename it and call it outline. And then we're going to start drawing the outline shape of our skirt. So let's start with the pen tool, and I'm going to do the waist first. So let's choose a point where roughly I want the waist to be, and we'll drag with the shift key, and let's make first waist point. Click and make the corner, and then let's come down, and I'm going to do a calf length skirt, so I want it to be roughly here, and then I'm going to hit Control and click away. The reason being is I'm going to do a flared skirt, so I'm going to draw that line separately in a second. Now I'm not quite happy with the curve of my skirt here, so I'm going to take the selection tool and let's just go in and drag the handles and change that slightly. So I'm going to do the left and the right half of the skirt before I do my curved line, because I don't want my flared line to actually be symmetrical, so that's okay. It's only these two sides I want to be symmetrical. So I'm going to hit my selection tool and let's select this left half, and then we'll go to the reflect tool. So I just need to click on my guideline halfway just above, and let's drag with the mouse as we're getting near, Shift, Control and Alt, and then let go of the mouse. So I've now got my left and my right half. So let's join these two together at the top. So direct selection tool, drag a box over the anchor point, right click, average, OK, right click and join. So you see, as I did the join, it made this one whole shape and filled in the middle with the fill colour of white. So the next thing I'm going to do is draw the flared hem. So I'm going to do this with my pen tool, but we're going to do it in two parts. The first thing I'm going to do is draw an uneven zigzag line connecting the two hem points. So let's hover over my first anchor point until I get the forward slash, knowing I'm connecting to this path. Make a click, and I'm going to draw just a shallow but uneven zigzag line. And then hover over my end anchor point till I get the circle next to my mouse, knowing that I'm going to connect to this end of the path. So let's click here. Okay, so just looks like a zigzag line at the moment. Doesn't look very realistic as a flared skirt. So the next tool I'm going to use is my anchor point tool. So here we go, anchor point tool. And I'm going to do the top anchor points of the zigzag first. What I'm going to do is click on the anchor point and drag, hold down the shift key and just drag roughly to the next anchor point. And I'm going to repeat this with all the top anchor points. Okay. Remember to start dragging before you press shift, otherwise you might actually move the anchor point itself. So I'm going to repeat that, but on the bottom row of anchor points. So dragging to roughly in line with the next anchor point. So holding down shift to constrain. And you can see this is starting to look more like how a flared skirt hem would look. Okay, so one more, drag and then hold shift. Okay, so that is pretty much my outline finished. So let's go up to my layer panel and just lock the outline. And we'll create a new one to do the detail on. So create new layer, and let's just double click and call this one detail. Now the first thing I'm going to do is draw myself a waistband. So let's go back to the pen tool. Actually first let's just zoom in a little bit so you can see what I'm doing a bit better. So then back to the pen tool. Okay, so I'm now going to draw a waistband. I could copy this top line, but it's not too much of a curve, so I can probably just judge this by eye. So I'm going to start about here. I'm going to hold down my shift key so I know that my next anchor point is exactly horizontally in line with my first. But then I'm going to drag slightly just to make a bit of a curved line here. And let's click away. Again, you can use your direct selection tool if you just need to adjust that curve in any way. And let's just take my selection tool, select that, and I'm going to change the weight of that to about 0.75. I like to make my detail lines slightly thinner than my outline lines. Gives a nicer finish. So let's make a copy of this line and do a row of top stitching along the top. So I'm going to do a Control or a Command C, and then Control and Command F to paste in front. And this top line, I'm going to make sure that it doesn't have a fill. I'm then going to change its weight to about 3 points is probably good. And then we'll go to Object, Path, Outline Stroke, and then swap the fill and the stroke colour round to give us our 2 lines. And let's change this weight to 0.5 points. And then we need to make it a dashed line. So exactly the same techniques as you've seen with the vest and the t-shirt. So here we go. We've got a dashed line. That's a little bit small. So let's turn it into a dash of 2, a gap of 3. Okay, and I'm going to use my direct selection tool just to get rid of the second row here. Okay, so let's just use the Alt key with my zoom key to zoom out. And then holding down the space to activate the hand tool, I'm just going to position the drawing. So we can next do the flared skirt lines. So I'm going to use my pen tool for this. And I'm going to start with lines that are about 0.75 point. So all you need to do is click somewhere near the kind of the shape of this scallop and then just drag and click to finish. Now I've still got it on dashed line here, so let's just select it with the selection tool and remove that dash, and back to the pen tool, and let's do the next one. And the next one, and just continue all the way along. Again, they don't have to be perfect straight away. Remember, you can adjust them after they've been drawn. Okay, and one more. Okay, so it's starting to look more like a flared skirt. However, these lines don't look quite realistic yet. What I'm going to do is use profiles on them so we get a more dynamic flowing line that looks a little bit more like draping fabric. So I'm going to use my selection tool and I'm going to select all of my lines by dragging a box over them, and I'm going to come down here and select a profile. The one I probably want to use is width profile 4. So let's just select that one and see what that looks like. Okay, so you now see that I have a thicker line near the bottom and it's tapering off as it goes up the skirt, so it's giving me a bit more of a realistic look. We wouldn't necessarily have flat panels here. If we've got a nice big flare on the skirt, we're probably going to have a little bit of kind of crinkling at the top. So I could use my pen tool, but in this instance I'm going to use the pencil tool. It gives us a little bit more freehand, fluid looking lines. So let's zoom in up here and then select my pencil tool. Now remember, if you double click on the pencil tool, you can change the fidelity. So if I want very accurate to my mouse movement, I can make it accurate by clicking towards the left, and if I want Illustrator to smooth out the lines for me, I'll click to the right. Now I think for this I'm going to want it somewhere in between, so I'm going to select the middle and then click OK. So the first thing I may want to do is just lock these two lines just in case I accidentally click on them. I don't want them affected, so let's just drag a line over them, and I can see in the layers panel they've come up here. So let's just lock this one and lock that one just so they don't get affected. And we'll go back to my pencil tool, and now I can start drawing some movement lines. Now I think I'll change that down to 0.5 for these. So again, if you have a pen and tablet, this is great for doing this sort of thing. It's a lot harder to get a more freehand look when you're using a mouse. Okay, and we just continue like this. So again, let's use the profiles on these lines. So let's select them all with my selection tool and go to profiles and choose width profile 4 again. So there you go, slightly more realistic looking. So let's zoom out. And we'll hide the dummy so we can see what our skirt looks like. And there we go, a flared skirt.